Like I said, if you are here to learn about 4 positions on Ascent that are going to be meta, okay? For anybody that just joined, remember to mute up. We're going to be covering Ascent. We're going to be talking about defense just a little bit more than attack, but I'm going to be giving you some hints as to what are things that you should be looking for on both attack and on defense when you're paying attention to these positions on both sides, okay? So really quickly, again, we're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. If you would like to give it, again, it's completely free. You can take it back at any point in time, but just trying to reach it. Once you reach 1,000, we're going to be giving a giveaway for a C9 jersey. Okay, let's get started really quickly. When we are looking at the 4 positions, we kind of have to pay attention to Ascent itself. Ascent is a map that is very mid-centric. So 2 of the positions that we're going to be covering are going to talk about mid, okay? And if you're too unfamiliar about how the map works, there's going to be 3 different lanes. 1 lane leads to A site, 1 lane leads to B site. So basically those entrances, those are the lanes that we're going to be talking about. And then there's 1 major lane down the middle, okay? And that's going to be mid. And we're going to be talking about 2 positions in there, okay? We're going to be covering a little bit more in detail when it comes to those 2 positions. If you're still unfamiliar with the maps, I suggest that you look up Valorant. It's a really good tool, and you can just look up and you can just go through the menus and find Ascent. It's going to give you a really good top-down view of how the map looks, okay? So with that out of the way, let's talk about what makes a good position. A good position takes a lot of things into consideration. The first one it takes into is the economy. Normally you're playing on rifles and you really don't think about the economy in that way, but there's some things that you could consider. Number 1, what if they have all pistols and you are currently on something like a rifle, right? You can take longer range fights because their guns don't really reach that far, right? You can start looking at things like ultimates. You can start paying attention to things like what are the ultimates that they're going to use in that push. If they have something like a K ult, then you're probably going to assume that they're going to be running it down. So a position where you are huddled into a corner is probably not the best one. You can start looking at things like utility. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this in detail in just a second, but utility can really change the way that you're taking that fight. So for example, you can do these corners, like for example, right here that I'm going to be showing, you can kind of stay in this position here by this potted plant. You can stay in that position. And what if, for example, you are on an eco buy, you have a shotgun, and they don't have any information? You're able to easily play these positions because they have to face check them. There's nothing that they can do to deal with that position other than just clear you, right? And even then, they might not. So it's very important for you to look at the utility that they have to determine a good position. But again, last but not least, all of these things could come into consideration, but you need to consider the backup plans. I'm going to be showing 2 different lines of these positions. The green lines, which are things you can do to play more aggressively, and you can use them to pay attention to taking more space. And then the red lines can be used to retreat or give them a little bit more space so you have more time to breathe. Okay, so with that out of the way, those are the things that we're going to be looking at when it comes to these positions. Hopefully we are ready to go. So let's explore just a tad, a little bit more with what we just covered. In order for you to understand why these positions are good, we need to kind of look at it from the perspective of the agents. Okay, now we're going to be looking at Haven in just a second. So this right here is C site. Okay, you're going to be noticing over here, this is the default. This is the area where like the little area tends to be where people plant. This is the platform, right? And this is the entrance over here. Here's garage, and over here is CT. You're going to notice from the 2 different agents that I have picked here, only one of them, if pushed, will stay alive. And that's going to be Jet. Jet has the utility to leave. Jet has the utility to kind of walk away from that unscathed, whereas KJ has to stay in that position. The positions that we're going to be covering have to be considered from the perspective of someone that just can't get out. If we're looking at it from the perspective of someone like a Jet, any position can be a good position. Same thing with Reyna. Any position can be a good position just simply because you can always just leave. You just have to have good aim, and that's it, right? So we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of an agent like KJ, someone that can't really get out. I'm going to be putting some agents that you could be playing in those positions generally, but again, it doesn't really have to matter. We're going to be looking at agents that can just leave and walk away. So let's talk about position number 1. Position number 1 we're going to be paying attention to is stairs. B site is a very tough site to hold. The walls feel like paper. They kind of are. All of this is wall bangable. All of this is just really easy to kind of get through. If they have something like a Sheriff, an Ares, an Odin, an Op, all of these walls over here just feel like paper because they're just going to be able to just shoot right through them. So when you're paying attention to the position that you're going to be playing, you got to make sure that you're playing just far enough that that utility is not going to hit you, that like gunplay is not going to hit you, but at the same time, you're still safe enough to play with your team. And this is where stairs comes in. Usually you could tell players to play back here by dice and just hit them as they like to push into the lane. However, this is a really easy spot to expect, not making it really powerful. The second position that you might expect is this position that I gave you back here, but you're going to notice that in the position that we're in, you can always retreat to that position, giving you a chance to play for more time, for more space. Whereas if we're playing over here, and if we're playing over here just at the start, we're giving them all this space to begin with. Okay, there's three things that makes this position really good. It gives you a position to leave. You can just very easily leave by this red line over here. You can just jump out, pull out your knife, run away, you're good to go. The second one is natural cover. This is a really good position for players that just want to be able to swing when the smoke comes down and there's nothing that they can do about it. This is a good position to play. Last but not least, you have a cross from market. If you're not playing with your guy market here and you're not communicating, or maybe you're not someone that can communicate, right? Always make sure that you're paying attention to what this guy is doing. If he's not helping you, okay, if they're not helping you, if she's like not giving you any smokes or anything like that, leave, okay? This is a good place for you to kind of reposition yourself out of that danger. And this is why this is a really good position to play, just generally for stairs, okay? A pretty basic position, but I feel like it has to be explained. If you feel like you have something that, you know, you can still hold despite all of the fights over here, reposition yourself back over here by boathouse and you'll be fine. Let's talk about position number 2. Again, the positions are going to be pretty general, but I feel like they need to be explained in detail. Here's where we start talking a little bit more about game sense, okay? When you are playing mid, when you're playing towards this area, you're going to notice that the enemy has an access to this area over here, which is going to be tree. When you're playing something like market, you got to make sure that you're feeling confident with your aim. When you're playing any mid position, you got to make sure you feel confident with your aim. If you're not, I suggest that you pick one of the main sites. And it might seem a little counterintuitive since they are going to be taking main sites all of the time. But in main sites, you can always just retake. You don't really have to take the fight. Whereas in mid, if you give up the mid area and you don't take a fight or you don't contest in any way, you're giving them way more than they really need, making the rest of the space a lot harder to take back. So for example, when you're playing here by mid, and again, Omen's a really good option over here, simply because you can kind of give the smokes. Clove is a really good option. Brim, usually you want to play by side, so let's not talk about him. But generally, when you're playing towards this mid area, I always want you guys to pay attention to this smoke right here. This smoke in the middle can give you guys a lot of problems. The first one is, if they have something like a Sova, they can drone in through, they can dart here through, and they can push out, not giving you a lot of space to kind of recover, okay? Number 2, like I said, you have to contest space. So if you're contesting this space right here and they put this smoke, you no longer have anything to work with. They gave off this idea of you can no longer see what's going on. However, one thing that I've always noticed is whenever they put this smoke over here, they're normally waiting to take this space by cat. So if you always get this smoke down, you have 2 options. Number 1, you can retreat and try to help this tree area. Or number 2, you can use it to essentially kind of push up and wait for this smoke to get either come down or try to get a timing and push up on this cat area, right? Again, notice how both of them had to do with contesting space. Both of them had to do with taking a fight because you don't want to give them that space back, okay? So watch out for this smoke right here when you're playing this mid-market. Another thing that you can do with this market area is also help. Like I said, you can help this behold. If they're coming down and you're playing something with a flash, or there's somebody that can help you flash, or again, the smoke is down, a good area to play aggressively is to push down and take this area back here. It's really easy to take. Usually they kind of get caught off guard when you push past the smoke. I've seen too many people, like regardless of rank, always fall for it. So this is something that you can consider. But again, you got to be confident in your aim. Okay, there's always going to be a contest, so make sure you're paying attention. Last but not least, the escape points. Number 1 is over here. You can escape all the way back, giving you a chance to play over here by this fountain area. You can jump into this fountain area, giving you a good idea of what's going on right there. So it's a free way to just jump peek without really having to worry about dying. Okay, none of them are tense. They're not going to shoot you while you're in the air. I promise you. Okay, the second thing is, if you're playing here and let's say, for example, they're all pushing you mid and you don't feel confident taking this way out, you can still move your way in through sight. So don't be afraid to just go in through sight to take CT and then reposition yourself back. If you're playing someone like Omen, you can just TP across. If you're playing someone like Jet, again, you can do that dash stuff. But if you're playing someone like KJ, you want to take that space that is safer. So this is another position that you can choose to kind of use if you want to still maintain this control over mid. Make sure you're communicating if you can. Okay, I know it's difficult, but pings are really important. Okay, use those triangles, use those pings, communicate that there's enemies taking that area around here, and around here. Okay, you are a huge source of information. Keep that in mind. So that covers B. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move on to the next one. Okay, when we're looking at tree, this is the same idea as that of market. However, there's a tiny difference when it comes to holding tree. And what people think when it comes to holding this position is that they want to be inside of the tree area. And I find that that is a really common misconception. Playing inside of tree is the easiest way to get domed. You're going to get killed in this position. You're not going to get any sort of space or any value from this position unless people like the players that are in market are helping you take that space. So if you're someone that's struggling to take this position over on A, I suggest that you play over here by this right side. Okay, you can play over here on the left side if you want to hold for anyone pushing up on cat. But again, that requires some coordination, some communication. This position over here gives you two options. Number one, if they like to push up, you can easily just spam across. You can get them as they're trying to get to switch. You can get the door once it's closed. So you have a couple of options there. And the second one is if they like to cross from over here from cat, they have to essentially cross this sight line and they have to contest you. So from the clip that I just kind of showed at the early beginning, right? You can kind of see that they kind of have to cross this position and they don't really have an option to really play against me. They just have to kind of contest me here. They have to contest this area back there, and it's a lot easier to deal with than being without cover over here by where I mentioned inside of tree. Okay, you have a couple of options. Let's say you have more mid space, you can kind of push up, you can kind of take that space. If you feel like you got to take having control, you can always do that again. You can do that as well. And if you feel like you're getting pushed back, do not go up the window. Make sure you retreat back this way. Okay. Your responsibility is not going to be to contest by pushing out every single time. You're not like market. You don't have to make sure that if you lose that information, you can always get it back in some way, shape, or form. You got to make sure that you stay alive. That is the most important part. If you stay alive and you move over here and you're still alive, you're still keeping some control. You can still keep some idea of what they're going to do, because some players think that I can't lose tree and I have to fight, and they fight, and now the enemy can push up window. Now the enemy can push into CT. Now the enemy can take space, right? This is what happens when you leave this position uncontested. And there's a difference between uncontested and just leaving it for a moment, which is just kind of temporarily giving them some relief to cross, okay? You're still holding these positions. Your main job is to stay alive and spam this entrance or door when it's happening. Be mindful of the smoke again in mid, because if you see that your mid is not helping you out, then that means someone's coming cat. And that's a really good tell when something's about to happen. Last position. I feel like this one's the hardest for people to kind of understand just because they have three different ideas. Number one, they think that they need to play by generator. And I don't really blame them. They think generator is a really good position because as they push out, really good fight. But in reality, you're just putting yourself in a position for a wide swing. Not really optimal. Not really optimal to fight against when you're playing on a controller. It's not really optimal when you're not really familiar with your flicks on mouse. And it's not really optimal if no one is helping you because you're going to get swarmed from the left side as well. Generator is also really easy to flash right across. It's really easy to dart. It's really easy to kind of hit with like Clove's metal, right? There's a lot of things that you can do. Generator doesn't seem ideal. The second option might seem like dice, but again, Sova is really popular. Deadlock is currently in the meta. We have things like, again, Clove's Metal, which also just really popular in the meta. All of these positions are going to get you killed in this position. Maybe you're playing in an elo where people just want to play Raze on this map. Really easy to nade, right? And these positions just become a lot more dangerous to hold. The last position that people think they should play is over here by Heaven. Now, I don't blame them for thinking that position is is good. It's a very popular position to play. However, you're not really holding. And the whole point of this idea of learning positions is to learn to hold. It's to learn to take more space. It's to learn to control that idea. But usually when you're playing and you're leaving from heaven over just because you're going to retake, that's a whole different thing, right? The context is simply you're going to retake. And it's not a very popular position. Sorry, it's not a very good position because you're not really holding for anything. You're just leaving site once you get information. Sure, you can do it if you're having a really hard time or you have KJ ult, but I don't suggest it. The position that I suggest players to choose is this area by hell. Now, why this area by hell? Now, we talked about why these two positions are really difficult to use. And it's kind of obvious why positions up here in the front are not going to be good for you. These positions right here, they're considered something we call one and dones. It means that someone's going to come in, you're going to kill one, the second one is going to come up, and they're going to kill you. You get one, and you're done. That's a one and done. That's normally what we like to consider those angles, these 90-degree turns that they just have to take. You're pretty much not going to get a lot of value out of that position, meaning that you're mostly stuck into this backside area. Playing in hell gives you three different things. Number one, it gives you cover from all the fights that we just talked about. Nothing like that is going to reach you here. Normally, they don't like to nade hell when there could be someone up here, right? They have to clear these positions first. Number two, aside from utility immunity, you're also immune from wallbangs. These positions right here are really easy to spam just from a bunch of different angles from multiple people fighting you. However, when you're fighting in hell, you have this area right here by dice, and you have this area right here by the back of hell. You have two areas to kind of worry about when you're always trying to retreat. If you're planning to hold a site, this is a really ideal position to play with because, again, let's say, for example, they have pistols. You can play from all the way back here and still be able to take those fights. Let's say, for example, someone is playing with a rifle. You can still take that fight from far away. They're still really good for you. Okay. Last but not least, let's talk about what happens when you jump peek. A lot of people are not aware of this, but if you jump peek from this back area, okay, if you're over here, let's say, for example, you're playing by dice, you can jump peek by just pressing like the space bar. And what happens is your head is going to hit the top of this little bridge by heaven. And you're essentially going to see a sliver off of the top of the boxes. So what that's going to give you is a good idea of what's happening when people are entering. So let's say someone's coming in and they're entering, you can just jump peek and see what's going on. Bonus points if you ask players to give you a hand. And a good example of this would be asking for a site split. So for example, if someone puts a smoke right in this area by the A, you now have a position to kind of play around with and still remain in control of the map, at least in control of A site. So someone just asked, how do you get out of those positions, such as the ones in hell? So this is why, again, that's very important for people to think that heaven is really good. If you're planning to leave, if you're planning to not hold, then you would play something like heaven. Normally, staying in these positions kind of indicate that you're planning on taking those fights. So there's really no option for you to kind of get out unless you either have support from your players on tree, support from someone coming in immediately to help you out, or support from some example like, again, like I mentioned, a site split, right? If someone puts a smoke right here, you can very easily just get out by just kind of trying to get out of that position really quickly. If you're someone that has flashes, you might have a glimpse of time in which you're able to kind of get out. But normally on A site, unlike what we just talked about in B site, you don't really have a chance to get out. And that's what makes A site really hard to hold for some people. So in that situation, if you are having a really hard time with your team and they're not really helping you, then I suggest you take that heaven spot and just get out. But again, this is more about map control. This is about good positions that you can use for kills. If you're someone that just want to get that information, you really can't do anything, then I suggest you choose heaven and just get out of the site, as your team is going to help you out later. Okay, so you really can't get out, but you have options in case you can't really get out in the future. Let's say you've been doing this position for 3 times, your team's not helping you, just play heaven. Let's say you are having a really hard time retaking, then play site, get as many as you can. The options are pretty much 1 or 2, right? So that pretty much concludes the precisions. Okay, we're going to be opening up a question period. So hopefully you guys have some questions lined up, and let's get started.